good day everyone. My name is Song Chui Chen with the matrix number D201810825054. Today, my groupmates and I will discuss about the topic of differentiate between tax evasion, tax avoidance, and tax planning. What is willful tax evasion? Taxes are classified as involuntary fees levied on individuals or corporations and enforced by a government entity, whether it is under local, regional, or national, that is in order to finance one country's government activities. Most of the taxes are applied to the income earned from salary, dividends received as additional income, capital gains from investment appreciation, and payments made for goods and services from individual and corporate residents. By the way, the government have introduced a program or policy initiative known as tax relief through the process of tax planning. It may be universal tax cut that benefits a specific group of taxpayers. It is governed under Section 45A to Section 49 of the Income Tax Act 1967. In fact, tax planning is the legal process of arranging an individual's affairs to minimize the tax liability and reduce the amount of total tax payable effectively. However, there are certain individuals who often use illegal methods to evade the total tax payable to avoid themselves to pay a higher amount of personal income taxes. The illegal methods included tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is the method of purposely and illegally reducing an individual's total tax payable, such as not disclosing income or falsifying figure, hiding income from the taxman, overclaiming expenses, declaring bankruptcy, and restarting the company under a different name. This will lead to some serious fines and penalties. Besides, tax avoidance method can be shown by putting savings under the name of the individual's partner to take advantage of their lower tax band.
My name is Tan Li Yan. My metric number is D201810819996. So I'll be going through the prior studies about the topic. So firstly, what is tax evasion? Tax evasion happens when an individual or a business illegally avoids paying for their tax liability, which is a criminal charge subject to penalties and fines according to the law. Those caught are commonly subjected to criminal charges and substantial penalties. To intentionally avoid paying taxes is a serious offence under the Internal Revenue Service (IRS) tax code. Tax evasion is a means to reduce tax liability by deceit, subterfuge, or covering up to the authorities. And tax evasion is no doubt a crime. So secondly, what is tax avoidance? Tax avoidance is legal strategies of the tax regime in a territory to an individual's own advantages to reduce the amount of tax that is payable but not breaking the law. A tax shelter is a type of tax avoidance, and tax havens are jurisdictions that facilitate reduced taxes. Tax avoidance minimizes tax billing through restructuring transactions to reap the highest tax profits. Tax avoidance is undoubtedly legal and smart. Tax avoidance would need advanced planning beforehand. So lastly, what is tax planning? Tax planning is an analysis of financial situation or a plan that pulls all the required elements to work together that will gain the individual to pay the lowest tax as possible. A plan that would keep how much you pay for tax to a minimum is labeled as tax efficient. Tax planning is an essential part of an individual investor's financial plan.
My name is Ong Sim Ying and my metric number is D2018108191. Now I'm going to present the differentiate between the tax evasion, tax avoidance, and tax planning. First, it can be differentiated by the definition. Tax planning is an exercise undertaken to minimize the tax liability to the best use of all available exemption, deduction, rebates, and relief to reduce income. Tax avoidance is defined as the creative design of tax statement in a legal way with the aim of income reduction or increase of expenditure. For the tax evasion, it generally defined as the illegal act to reduce the tax burden. Next is the objective perspective. The objective of tax planning is to effectively minimize the liability of tax by applying the provision and moral of law. Meanwhile, the objective of tax avoidance is to reduce the individual tax liability by applying legal loopholes. For the tax evasion, it is deemed a form of not paying tax. Thus, the objective is to adjusting the financial affairs as not paying tax to the government. Followed by the perception of legality. Both tax planning and tax avoidance are considered legal. because they are in compliance with the tax law, while the tax evasion is considered illegal as it includes the fraud and the use of illegal means. Furthermore, it also can be differentiated by the impact. For the individual who exercising tax planning and tax avoidance will not subject confine or reprove. Due to the tax evasion has illegal content and fraud, only the individuals who commit tax evasion are confined and reproved. In addition, this term also can be distinguished by the time of its implementation. Tax planning and tax avoidance are both done before the tax liability, while the tax evasion is done after the tax liability. Last but not least, it also can be differentiated by the motivation. The motive of tax planning is to save the tax liability, while for the tax avoidance is to dodging the tax liability. And the motive of tax evasion is the act of concealing the tax liability.
My name is Jasmine Hochashin with matrix number D2018-108-2020. There are a few ways to solve tax evasions. Firstly, the tax rates should be reduced. High tax rates causes tax evasion to occur because it ensures tax evasions will be more practical when risk happens. When the current tax rates increases, the authority does not have the alternative to develop the mobility in delivering more assets to sustain the crisis. Besides that, the controls and license of the management should be minimized and regularly checked. A panel of specialists should be selected to inspect the usage of permit structures and current controls. Any unnecessary structures and controls should be immediately removed. Managing donations to community functions is also important in ensuring that the functions are not being involved in corruptions. No matter the government finance the functions or not, the records of the functions must be evaluated on a daily basis to prove that all transactions records are very crucial. On the other hand, for tax avoidance, it is also advisable to cut down the tax rates. Many people tend to conceal their financial incomes when the tax is high. This is because high tax rates intimidate people from attempting productive economic activities. Next, exit taxes, which means that any organization that would like to shift their business to overseas, the organization should pay taxes to the government. This approach is to convince the organization to develop locally, but this approach can only be applied when the tax rates are much lower. Tax avoidance can occur due to unprovincial taxation. This tax regime has bolstered organizations to integrate their business in countries with lower tax rates. Some countries are even at tax war in a way to reduce tax rates while creating deficits. New laws must be urgently determined to ensure that it is taxed per local laws.
My name is Chong Hui Ching with matrix number D2018-108-2022. Willful tax evasion is usually involved fraudulent techniques such as purposefully underreporting taxable incomes or profits, exaggerating deductible expenses, or illegally not paying taxes altogether. A person who performs an action or deed willfully with intent to evade tax or assist any other person to evade tax, and a person who assists in or advises with respect to the preparation of a return where the return results in understatement of the liability for tax of another person may be liable for prosecution and liable to a fine or imprisonment or to both. In conclusion, tax income is the main source in increasing Malaysia's federal government's revenue, and it is used to finance government expenditure. Although tax avoidance is reducing tax amount with legal way, it is an hidden income to the country as well as the tax evasion. Hence, it is highly recommended to find tax expertise made a tax planning because it can make sure taxpayers have a legitimate tax planning that are not operating outside the bounds of the law and will not subject to unexpected legal consequences. Thank you.